called this morning and I found out that I would have to pay, so I can't pay that money, so I'll defend myself.
A Wisconsin father who allegedly faked his own death and fled the country may have been brought down by a single mistake. We're going to break down the bizarre case of Ryan Borgwardt, from how he allegedly staged this whole elaborate plot, how he came back into the country, what legal consequences he could now be facing, and the why of it all. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. I'm not going to lie to you, this story, when I talk about it, is like a Hollywood thriller, but I promise you, this is completely real. A Wisconsin father allegedly tried to pull off one of the most elaborate disappearances I think I have ever seen, faking his own death and fleeing overseas to be with, as the Daily Mail reports, his mistress. That's the allegation. Now, in the end, it seems his own mistake seemed to expose him, and I'm going to explain why. But this all started back in August, when Ryan Borgwardt, a 45-year-old father of three from Watertown, Wisconsin, was thought to have gone on a fishing trip on Green Lake. It's about an hour away. The problem was, he never came back. The family reported him missing the next day. And when authorities show up to the scene, what do they find? They find a flipped kayak, a life preserver. They find his tackle box, fishing pole, water bottle, his car and trailer still parked. So it leads them to believe he had an accident. He drowned. Just a tragedy, right? And as you can imagine, this is absolutely devastating for his family, his wife, Emily, their three children. But as the days dragged on and as emergency services and volunteers tried to find Ryan Borgwardt's body, there was no trace of him. And investigators started to have some doubts. And soon enough, they realized they were not looking for a body. No, they were looking for somebody who was very much still alive and who may have made his way to Eastern Europe. And I will explain how they ultimately came to that conclusion in a minute. But in the end, authorities were able to establish a contact with Ryan Borgwardt overseas. He eventually returned home willingly, and he made his first court appearance last week, pleaded not guilty to an obstruction charge that he now faces. He was released from jail after posting a $500 bond, and during that appearance, he told the judge that he would represent himself.
I called this morning and I found out that I would have to pay, so I can't pay that money, so I'll defend myself.
Now, the Green Lake County Sheriff's Office announced his arrest during a press conference last week.
On December 10th, Ryan arrived on U.S. soil.
Green Lake County Sheriff Mark Podol became emotional talking about his office's efforts to bring Borgwardt essentially back to his family.
They're the ones that kept this going. I couldn't be more proud of them, of what they did for a family. We didn't give up. And when my press conferences, I said, it could be a really good Christmas. We brought a dad back on his own accord.
Now, the sheriff revealed that his office had spoken to Borgwardt's family after his return.
Have you spoken with his family since his return, and could you share any of maybe some of their feelings and what they may have had to say following the news?
We just briefly spoke to them, and I can only imagine how they feel.
And although the sheriff didn't elaborate specifically on whether Ryan Borgwardt had been in contact with his family, we have learned a very interesting update on his family, and we'll get to that in a minute. Now, we were actually able to find out a little bit more about Ryan Borgwardt on TruthFinder, the powerful background checker that we often use when we research our stories. And TruthFinder revealed information like previous addresses, possible family connections. It appears Borgwardt, though, has no criminal history. Now, I will tell you, Law&Crime, we partner with TruthFinder. We use it to get details on people involved in the stories that we cover. But even if you don't work in true crime, it can be an amazing resource to give you some peace of mind. After all, it's one of the largest public record search services in the United States. And with a paid subscription service, you can get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. And so if you're interested right now, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LC Sidebar. Now, before we go any further in the case, I want to bring on retired homicide detective, legendary Phil Waters, to talk more about this. Phil, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate you taking the time. Have so much to talk to you about. I want to ask you first about these latest updates before we even dive more into the background of this case. Just give me your thoughts on this conclusion. What do you make of his decision to come back, his decision to plead not guilty, And his decision to represent himself, because he says he doesn't have the money to pay for a defense attorney, even though, as you and I both know, he would be appointed, a court-appointed attorney.
Well, it's good to be back with you, Jesse. This is a particularly strange series of events, right? We're discussing here. When we discussed it further, earlier, I would have to tell you, I think his coming back, that perhaps, I don't know, you'd like to think there's a little bit of a dose of conscience there of what he did to his family and the effect that he had on the entire community there. So, and perhaps his consort there in Georgia, I believe is where he ended up, was not what it turned out to be. So I'm glad he's back for whatever reason, and he's going to be held accountable for what he did. I think it's kudos to the sheriff and the sheriff's office there that they did find a way to hold him accountable in charging him with what they charged him with. So a lot of good things are coming out of this. Now I'm curious to hear about the reaction of the family with his return.
And look, in terms of, his case and him representing himself, that could change. But I should be clear about this obstruction charge. This is a misdemeanor, and it's our understanding he could face up to 9 months in jail, a $10,000 fine. And by the way, from a legal point of view, it makes sense that he was charged with this, because if you read the obstruction statute, it says knowingly placing physical evidence in a way to intentionally mislead officers. And you could say allegedly staging a scene to make it look like a drowning, knowing law enforcement would investigate, fits the facts of this definition. I mean, maybe he would say as a defense he didn't intentionally try to mislead police, but that might be a stretch. Oh, I do have to mention this, though.
Yeah.
Green Lake County, they are asking for $35,000 to $40,000 in restitution. Phil, as a former member of law enforcement, you feel this would be justified, right? Given the efforts the county, law enforcement, first responders, engaged in to conduct this search, right?
Oh, sure. I've been involved in these types of things where we're out searching for a person or a body that that presumably is dead, and he set this whole stage to make it appear as though that's what had happened. And in reading the affidavit, it's amazing the plan that he put in place and the way he executed it. And then when he came up against some certain hurdles that he wasn't expecting, how he got past those to further his plan. It's a kind of an amazing story when you look at it from that perspective.
I'm going to get to it just real quick, though. Something like this would make you angry, right? In the sense that you're wasting the valuable resources of police and first responders when they could be actually responding to real emergencies, real crimes.
Well, I don't know that anger would be the word. I would feel
I'd be angry. You're more measured than I am.
Well, I mean, it's not, this wouldn't be the first rodeo of this type, that I would have been involved in. So my thoughts would go to the family, and not really anger about what he did, but it would just be kind of curiosity. It's kind of like what in the world prompted you to do something like this that affected your children and your wife? So it wouldn't be anger, it would be more curiosity, I think.
So I want to get into this. I want to catch everybody up about how all this went down, how authorities actually found Ryan Borgwardt. So during the course of their investigation, authorities uncovered some very troubling signs that perhaps Borgwardt's disappearance was not an accident after all, because the day after he's reported missing, authorities discovered his passport was run by Canadian border officials. And then, after authorities examined his computer, they discovered that Ryan Borgwardt allegedly did a number of things to cover his tracks. He allegedly changed email addresses linked to his bank accounts, replaced the hard drive on his laptop, cleared browsers, was looking into passports, inquired on how to move funds into foreign bank accounts, and even took out a life insurance policy months before he disappeared. But the most shocking part of it all, authorities discovered he had been communicating with some mysterious woman from Uzbekistan. And therein lies the motive, because according to the Daily Mail, Borgwardt allegedly staged this plan to meet this woman overseas and start a new life with her, seemingly completely abandoning his family in the process. Although I will tell you, Borgwardt reportedly stated to police that his motivation for doing this, for faking his death, was due to, quote, personal matters. So let me stop right there. Phil, what do you make of the evidence of Borgwardt's alleged escape plan?
Well, I again, this is kind of one of these things that I am a little amazed at the complexity of the plan itself, and his he thinks he's got an escape plan, I guess, but it just all the things that he went through, the purchase of the e-bike and hiding these things from his family, and he left the laptop behind because he knew he couldn't bring that with him. He had to leave something back that would give some credibility to his death. But that was ultimately what brought him down, right? So they find the laptop and find all this stuff that's on the laptop that he had backed up. I think including a picture of the woman that he left his family for. So I think I'm just overall, I'm this may sound like a strange word, but I'm kind of impressed with the way that he went about staging all of this and then executing it. And when he came up to things that he hadn't planned for, he found another way to go around and continue on with the plan. So he definitely wanted to do what he did.
And when you think about it, you think about the great police work to investigate his life and see what was going on. Because when authorities discovered that Borgwardt was alive, their next step, of course, was try to find him. And they were able, as you were talking about, to use his computer to successfully establish contact with a Russian-speaking woman. And that person apparently put them in touch with Borgwardt. And when he initially began communicating with police, Borgwardt sent this proof of life video to them, confirming he was in this undisclosed location and very much alive.
Good evening, it's Ryan Borgwardt. Today, hello, and today is November 11th. It's approximately 10 a.m.
Phil, I want to talk to you about this video that he sent and the impact it may have had not only on the case but his family. Why release a video like that? And obviously he has to know what kind of emotional toll this might have on his family.
You can't get into this guy's head to understand what he's doing, what he's in the first place. And now maybe, like I said, maybe it's a dose of conscience, and he wanted to let his family know that he was okay. But I mean, so I'm okay, but I'm destroying my family and our marriage in the process. But I want to let you know I'm okay. He'd have been better off, I think, just going on with his little plan and not releasing the video. It did not make him look, if he's trying to appear to get people to be sympathetic toward him. He didn't achieve that. I think he just showed what a bigger scoundrel that he truly is.
And it's interesting because in his communications with police, he's not really backing down from what he did. I mean, he allegedly told them how he managed to do this and how he escaped. And you also have to think about why he came back. So according to this criminal complaint that was obtained by Law&Crime, this is how Borgwardt planned this all out, which again makes me wonder what his defense is going to be. I still think it might be I didn't intentionally try to mislead police, but I think that might be a stretch. But anyway, Borgwardt apparently told police that he was checking weather reports to see when it would be a good time to carry out this plan, since he knew he would have a long bike ride to try to leave the area, wanted to make sure that the weather would be ideal. And he eventually settled on that date of August 11th. And then on the day of his disappearance, Borgwardt told police he went to church with his family that morning before returning home to prepare for the fishing trip. And as part of that preparation, he grabbed an e-bike that he'd purchased a few weeks prior and loaded it into a trailer along with that inflatable raft. And then later on that evening, he headed to Wisconsin's Green Lake. Once at the lake, he parks the van, stashes the e-bike, and then he hops onto the kayak with the inflatable raft and his cell phone. He paddles out to the deepest part of Wisconsin's Green Lake, and according to the complaint, Ryan stated that once he got out to where he thought the deepest part was, he tossed the phone into the lake. Ryan then began inflating the raft and hopped in the raft, and Ryan then flipped over the kayak. So he left behind this trail of clues to allegedly mislead investigators because, according to the complaint, Ryan advised it was at this time that the tackle box and fishing pole went into the lake. Ryan also made comments that he wanted to leave his life preserver on the kayak, again, to make it more believable that he drowned in the lake. Phil, Boardwalk's plan, very, very elaborate here. You've talked about how maybe you've seen similar cases in the past. Have you seen something like this? And thank goodness he explained all this, because I wonder how much investigators would have been able to piece together what happened without him explaining what he did.
I don't know that I can recall a plan this elaborate. I mean, he went to the extent of bringing an extra battery with him for his e-bike. I mean, and he's stashing different parts, equipment in different places. The raft and the so forth and so on, and trying to really paint this picture that he fell over in the kayak and drowned in the lake and so forth and so on. So I tell you, I don't think I've seen any, and even some of the scenes that we've seen across the country where we've had people that have come up and put themselves in a situation that they're kidnapped and this and that, and then it turns out to be a whole hoax. But even in those cases that I can recall, I just, in reading this affidavit, I was amazed again at the complexity with which this plan was set up, and then he executes it, and then he comes across things, like I said, that he wasn't planning for, but
Yeah.
he then found a
Okay.
way to get around it. Yeah.
Let me tell you about it. So the plan wasn't foolproof, because while his kayak and his fishing gear were left behind, he quickly learned that the escape that he had meticulously planned wasn't going to be as smooth as he expected. Why? Because when he made it back to land, the terrain was muddy and it got on his shoes. Yeah. According to the complaint, Ryan stated that as he went across CTHK, the roadway, that he was leaving some muddy footprints. And Ryan then attempted to wash the footprints off the road and only washed about 2 footprints off the roadway. So he's trying to literally cover his tracks. And unfortunately, the weather also quickly turned cold. According to the complaint, Ryan told the detective during riding the e-bike he got very cold, so he ended up changing his shoes and pants. Phil, those footprints, again, tried to get rid of it, but he couldn't plan for everything.
Oh, I know. That's what I'm just amazed at his veracity with wanting to execute this plan. I don't know who this woman was. I think we talked about last time that, when he got there, it may end up being Bruno. But I still am amazed at what in the world was going on. The lure, I guess, is what I'm most curious about.
Committed to doing it.
Oh, I absolutely, and it's amazing to me that you would destroy, which is what he's done. I just hope they're able to rebuild,
Wow.
destroy his family and that relationship.
Well, I will get to the family update in a minute, because let me just go a little bit more to this escape. So eventually, Borgwardt ditches his e-bike and leaves the raft, I think, in a park. And then he hops on a Greyhound bus for the Canadian border. And once he gets to the Canadian border, apparently the Border Patrol there was kind of suspicious of him, because according to the complaint, it says Ryan stated he was asked for a driver's license and didn't have one. Ryan stated that he had showed Customs and Border Patrol his passport, as he thought that would be good enough. However, they still wanted to see his driver's license. Ryan stated that Canadian Border Patrol separated him from the rest of the group, and they were asking him questions. Yet, despite what appears to be heightened scrutiny, he was able to cross the Canadian border, and then he purchased a ticket and boarded a flight to Paris. So, Phil, when Borgwardt travels to Canada, he's questioned, but they don't stop him. Is that surprising to you?
It does. If there was some sort of suspicion there, I am a little surprised that, and of course, I'm curious as to the time frame in terms as his being reported missing. Was that in the media? Was there something? And of course, I guess at the time, it's all hindsight's always 2020, right? So it's I guess if authorities had some suspicion at the beginning of this, they could have put a border watch out, and if he crossed into Canada, then the authorities in
Right.
Canada would have been alerted anyway. But that didn't happen. But the fact that they were questioning him and then let him go ahead and come on into the country, I'm just curious as to who and what caused them to make the decision to let him come on into the country when they were so insistent about him having a driver's license. He didn't have it. He had a
Yeah.
passport, and whatever it was he told them that convinced them that, yeah, come on into the country and let's not pursue this any further.
So what happened? I mean, he goes from Paris, so he takes this trip to Paris, and then he apparently makes his way to Georgia, this country that's located at the crossroads of Europe and Asia. And it was there that he apparently met up with this woman that he had been talking with, and the two of them holed up in a hotel. And so for a while, it seemed like Borgwardt had gone away with his plan, right? He was living a new life, at least he thought he was. But at some point, he discovered that the police knew he was not dead. However, he was determined to still allegedly mislead them because according to the complaint, Ryan stated that even if we found out he was not deceased, he wanted to add as many layers as he possibly could so that he could not be found or tracked. Ryan stated that even when he would check the news, he would use a VPN and sometimes make it look like he was in Russia or somewhere else other than Georgia. Phil, I'm sure he's not the first person you've encountered who's tried to use some technology to change their location, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, and he appears to be somewhat in that genre of the all the technology that we have, that kind of thing, the digital stuff. And it may be one of these things where he knew enough to be dangerous, right?
Yeah.
And so he thinks he's doing the things he need to do, and it kind of catches up to him that maybe I didn't know what I thought I knew.
Yeah, and let me finish this out. So Borgwardt believed that police would eventually stop looking for him and then he'd be home free, but it all comes crashing down with one fatal mistake because on November 8th, police sent an email to Ryan Borgwardt, and in that email there was a photo of the woman that he was planning to meet. So how did police get the photo? Well, it turns out it was due to an error that he made when he was backing up a computer that he left at home. According to the complaint, Ryan stated that he attempted to back up the laptop that he had left back at the home for Emily, and he stated that he apparently backed up too many things and that too much data came over. And that photo was included in the extra data backup that came over, and it ended up right on that laptop. So why didn't he take the laptop with him? Well, according to Borgwardt, he wanted to sell his death story, and he needed to leave it at home to make it appear that he died in the lake, that this happened out of nowhere. So it's a simple error, but it seemed to expose what was going on. Now, it's unclear whether his wife, Emily, or investigators discovered the photo first, but once it was found, police were able to track down his location. So, Phil, perfect plans, not all the time.
Well, and it's kind of one of these things. There's always the running joke. Is planning the perfect murder. He tried to plan the perfect death, and it jumped up and bit him because of some missteps along the way. And Emily, the wife, leaving the laptop behind, which I think I read in the affidavit, was to further confirm his death. But then he ends up backing up more stuff than he intended to back up, and including a picture. And that kind of makes me believe that he didn't want to delete anything. I mean, whoever, like I said, whoever this woman is, I'd love to see the picture just to see what she looked like that caused him to do all the things that he did. I mean, she must have some amazing attributes. That's all I can say.
Well, so he ends up coming back to the United States, and look, this is the sad part about it. So not only is he facing a charge, not only is he facing restitution, but his legal troubles are not the only consequences, because according to records out of the Dodge County Circuit Court, his wife, Emily, maybe not a surprise, has filed for separation. She filed the day after he came back on U.S. soil. And those documents, which were reviewed by the Daily Mail, show that she is also requesting full custody of the couple's 3 children. And according to ABC, she claims the marriage is irretrievably broken. And Phil, that's really what it is. It's a broken family at the end of the day as you talk about this. But, I think about it. If he hadn't made some of these missteps, Could we have ever known really what happened to him? And you don't know why he came back, but I also wonder, would authorities here in the United States have been able to get him from Europe?
Well, I'll tell you what, that might have been tough to do, especially on a misdemeanor charge.
Yeah.
And it would depend on extradition treaties and so forth and so on with Georgia, Uzbekistan. You know, that there's a lot of legal wrangling that goes on with all that kind of thing, and a lot of factors that are involved in that and getting somebody back from overseas.
Yeah.
But I am curious as to what happened that caused him to decide I'm coming back.
Yeah.
Was that a
he said
discussion
personal
with his
reasons.
wife?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, did he have some sort? Is there a dialogue between he and his wife? Did she convince him, or the authorities, or what?
I think based on authorities, they basically said it had something to do with the family. Maybe we'll find out in due time. But I will tell you that, look, according to court records, Borgwardt's next appearance is scheduled for January 13. He's due for a hearing in April regarding the filing for legal separation. We'll continue to follow it. But Phil Waters, thanks so much for coming on. Good seeing you.
Appreciate it, Jesse, and you have a good one, and have a Merry Christmas and a Happy Hanukkah.
You too. Thank you so much. Happy New Year. All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us, and as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.